Hi there, Ariel and David, Jaime Tal, Danielle, Lee and Maya. So before I start, I want to remind you that you've probably eaten a hamburger and you have leather shoes and a leather belt. So when you hear about something that happened in the time of the temple involving a cow, you shouldn't be taken aback. How can they do this to a cow? You eat hamburgers. That's what they do to cows now. Hamburgers, shoes, and belts. So our parsha deals with the red heifer. It was a cow that was all red, and the ashes of this cow could be taken to somebody who was ritually unclean. That's called tameh, and sprinkled with this, they became tahor. They became clean, ritually clean. Now this is very mysterious. It's called a chok. The word is used for laws in the Torah which are beyond rational understanding. But yet the Midrash is driving and says, how could this happen? Explain to me mechanics. How could it be that something pure comes from something impure? How does that work? And basically the Midrash has a beautiful answer. He says, I'll answer the question with a question. Don't you see it already happening? Look in Tanakh. It's happened many times. Metaphorically, look at Abraham. His father sold idols, cash and carry business, idols. And what did his son do? His son discovered God on his own and went around on a life crusade teaching the world that idolatry is wrong and silly. It's not like you have to do stuff for this God and then this God won't hurt you. No, there's one God that all he wants moral perfection from people. He wants people to grow and learn and be moral in the way they treat each other. That's what God wants. It's not 10 different gods, a sun god and a moon god and a rain god, and each one you have to make happy or else it's going to harm you. So how is this metaphorically somebody pure emerging from somebody impure? There you have it. The next example is maybe you recognize from Tanakh. That is Chizkiyahu me Achaz. There was an evil king named Achaz who was so evil that he brought into the Jewish people the worst kind of idolatry. It was called Molech, where you actually have to worship this god. You had to pass your child through fire, or some say actually, God forbid, burn your child to death to show this god that you're worshiping him and he shouldn't hurt you. That's who Achav was. In fact, Achaz was, according to, in the Tanakh it says that he was once in Damascus. He was in Syria, and he saw a beautiful altar for idolatry, and he commissioned people to build that same altar in the temple of Jerusalem. Can you imagine the gorgeous temple of Jerusalem? He put this altar that he saw in Damascus so he could do his idolatry right in the temple. Right? And yet he had this king, Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu was so righteous that it says in the Talmud that God wanted to declare him the Messiah. Except one fault he had. There was a miraculous battle when the king of Assyria had surrounded Jerusalem, and an overwhelming number of troops, and they all passed away overnight. And all God wanted was that he burst out in song of praise of God to show that he was grateful for what happened, and he didn't do it. Otherwise, he would have been the Messiah. But you see a great righteous person, once again, purity emerging from impurity. And the next example is Yoshiyahu me Ammon. There was a wicked king named Ammon, and yet you had this king Yoshiyahu. And what does the Tanakh say about Yoshiyahu? It's really an amazing story. The Jews were so far from Judaism at that time, they hadn't even seen a Torah scroll. And somebody found the Torah scroll, and they brought it to the king and said, look at this. And they opened it up and they read it, and the king was transformed. He heard what God wanted from us, and he said, that's it. We now have to return to God. And he helped everybody return to God and study. That was his reaction. That's what a righteous king he was, and he emerged from a very evil king, and the opposite is true to his son, was evil, an evil king. So That's how metaphorically the Midrash is answering the question. But the most beautiful thing is, at the end of this list, the list goes on. The last thing on the list is, and how will the world to come emerge from this world? In other words, everything else on the list happened. So God can say, I could prove to you that something pure can emerge from impure. Just look at the way the world unfolded. But the last thing on the list hasn't happened yet. But yet, we might look around this world and say, can you imagine this world full of greed, full of people taking advantage and exploiting each other, and no agreement on anything that has to do with God? How could this world that's full of strife and war ever emerge from it a world of peace, a world where people are seeking knowledge of God? That's what the next world is supposed to be. How could it be? So embedded in this whole list that the Midrash gives is this promise. Do you say you think it's implausible? You think it's not going to happen? But I can show you. I just read you the list. It happened with King David. It happened with all the people on this list. Avraham, who came from Nachor, from Tarach, and Chizkiyahu from Achaz, and Yeshayahu from Ammon, and the list goes on. It already happened. You can already see how purity can emerge from impurity. So you can be rest assured that the same will be in the world to come. Although you look around and don't see it's plausible now, it is plausible and it is possible. Very much want to get your feedback. Love you all. Thank you so much for these wonderful signal sessions where we get to exchange our views. Looking forward to it. Thank you.